I'm working on with Jane Walsh. So it's a trial to improve health and well-being outcomes of overweight cancer survivors. So about a third of us are overweight, with 10% being clinically obese, but about half of cancer survivors are overweight. And being overweight is a risk factor for cancer development, and in cancer survivors can increase the risk of secondary cancers and subsequent primary cancers. So this program aims to improve health and well-being outcomes of a subgroup of cancer survivors who are at increased risk due to lifestyle factors, and we aim to do this primarily by increasing physical activity behaviour. So we developed our program using the principles of behavioural science. In particular, we selected behaviour change techniques from Susan Mickey's taxonomy that were found in previous studies to be effective in weight loss interventions and physical activity interventions. So to describe our intervention in a bit more detail, the first component was a lifestyle information session. So participants in the intervention group were invited to attend a half-day information session with a senior physio, senior dietitian, and a clinical psychologist, where they'd get education and advice that was personalised and tailored for cancer survivors. And we asked our clinicians to present the information in such a way that they could deliver these behaviour change techniques. With the clinical psychologist, they worked on barrier identification and problem solving around health behaviour and health behaviour change. And the second component of our intervention was a personalised goal setting intervention. So we were trying to increase average daily step count among our participants and to use graded tasks where they would gradually increase their step count by 10% a week. They were also receiving feedback on their behaviour from me and reviewing their behavioural goals. So this part of the intervention was delivered via mobile technology. So we used the Fitbit to facilitate participants reporting and self-monitoring their daily step count, but we also used a simpler model of the Fitbit to objectively monitor physical activity in both arms of the study. So to give a bit more detail on the study, we recruited 123 participants from the Oncology Outpatients Clinic in Letterkenny University Hospital. So post-completion participants, they were post-completion of cancer treatment, overweight and under 70. So we recruited 123 participants who came for baseline assessments, and then they were randomised and invited to attend either the intervention session where they got information and advice about their cancer diagnosis and how to change health behaviour, and they were also given a Fitbit. The control group were given a Fitbit too, and then 3 months later we followed them up. So at 3-month follow-up, which just happened last week, we have an attrition rate of 13% so far, which I think anybody would agree is a very respectable retention rate, and we had a response rate of 77% to the study. So one of the reasons for this, I think, is the context where the study happened. So this was run in Letterkenny University Hospital, where participants came for their assessments, but it was also the place where they received treatment and care during their cancer experience. Another feature for the success of the project was our funders, Irish Cancer Society and Relay for Life, who do a lot of fundraising activities in the community and have very good high profile there. And at the follow-up assessments, the participants spoke about this sense of duty to help other cancer survivors, and Relay for Life have a very strong impact in the community, and there's a really strong group identity of cancer survivors in Donegal because they face additional challenges of having to travel to Galway for their treatment. So one of the features of this trial is that we implemented a mobile health intervention using Fitbit. So there are definitely challenges of using individual consumer products like Fitbit for mass data collection with 120 participants. So there were a number of challenges, but I'm just going to focus in this talk on the one that we managed to overcome through innovation and collaboration with our colleagues at Insight. So I see Connell is here, and also Martin Serrano, obviously, from Insight. So they very graciously and generously developed a computer program for us that really made my life much simpler. So to describe a little bit about how that works for us. The participants' Fitbit is monitoring their step count. It then sends that data to their smartphone with the Fitbit app to the Fitbit server, and then the program that Connell has developed for us takes the data from the Fitbit server to the NUIG server, and then I can download it all in one Excel file, where I then review all the step counts, modify their step goal, and then send that back to the participant by text message. So if I had to manually go into each user's account and export the data individually, that would be very laborious. So certainly that program from Insight really helped. So how the goal setting intervention would work would be that the participant would get a text message, something like this. Your average daily step count last week was 2,000. Let's aim for 2,200 this week. So just adding 10% a week. The following week, I would then review their step count and say something like, congrats on reaching your step count goal. Let's aim for 2,420 this week. If they weren't successful in their goal, they would get a more neutral text message like the first one. So before I get into the results, the sample was average age of around 57, mostly females, mostly breast cancer. On average, they were about 6 years since diagnosis. So just to reiterate, our intervention had two components: lifestyle information delivered by clinicians, and then a personalized goal setting intervention that happened in participants' everyday lives and was delivered by mobile technology. So when we look at our health outcomes, we found that there was a significant reduction in weight from baseline to 3 months for both groups, but this weight loss was more significant for our intervention group. And our intervention group lost on average 2.2 kilos, whereas our control group lost 0.8 kilos. So as I said, this data literally just came in last week. So I think there's, just from being at the assessments, I know there's probably further analysis we can do that better represent the data, because off the top of my head I can think of one male participant and one female participant who both lost more than 2 stone. So averages are one way of looking at this, but there's obviously more nuanced approaches we can take to really get a good picture of our participants' successes. We found the same pattern of results of BMI. It declined in both arms of the study, but more significantly in the intervention. We didn't find a significant interaction effect for waist circumference. It declined for both groups, but not more significantly for the intervention group. So we also looked at some well-being outcomes, and the pattern of findings here was that there was no significant effect of our intervention on well-being, but rather well-being improved for everybody over the 3 months. And this was the same for a number of different measures we looked at: fatigue and self-efficacy. Then if we look at our physical activity outcomes, one interesting finding was that we did find there was a significant increase in exercise self-efficacy over the 3 months for our intervention group. So our intervention group increased in their beliefs in their own capacity to engage in physical activity and to motivate themselves to do exercise, whereas this declined over the same time period for the control group. We found that there was a significant increase in self-reported physical activity over the 3 months, and this didn't differ for our control or intervention group. But what we do know from previous studies is that we're not very good at estimating our own physical activity levels. So the Fitbit provided some interesting insight in relation to our step count. So what we're seeing here is average daily step count for each of the 12 weeks of our study so far. And the green line there is our intervention group. So more of our intervention group are getting above the recommended 10,000 steps. But if we look at some significant group differences that emerged, and we can look at the efficacy of our interventions. So at this point, we had our lifestyle information and education session. And we can see then that for the 2 weeks following this, there was a significant group difference in step count, with our intervention group being more physically active. At this point then, the other red line, week 4, we started texting people, reminding them that we are watching their step counts and giving them goals if they're in the intervention group. And we saw that this was associated with significantly greater step count in the intervention group for 3 weeks following that. So that this kind of peters off might suggest that maybe some other type of intervention is needed here, like some kind of booster session or some other type of mHealth intervention. Or if you notice, step count there, average step count for the intervention group is quite high. It's about 12,000, 13,000 steps. So that represents a kind of significant amount of time walking. So maybe the goal needs to be readjusted at that point, and it could be, instead of trying to increase step count, it could be trying to increase intensity of physical activity or some other kind of physical activity goal. So something worth noting is that all of our participants, whether they were assigned to the intervention or control group, were wearing physical activity monitors. And physical activity monitors themselves have the potential to deliver behaviour change techniques and primarily self-monitoring. But also an individual setting their own goals and getting feedback on their behaviour. And some studies would estimate that there's about 20 to 40 different behaviour change techniques that can be delivered by wearable activity monitors. So some studies have also found that just wearing a physical activity monitor is associated with an increase of about 2,000 steps a day. So we found that even in addition to that, our intervention group were walking about 2,000 to 3,000 more steps a day than our control group. So just in conclusion, at this 3-month follow-up period, we can say that our intervention incorporating lifestyle information and personalised goal setting led to a significant reduction in weight and BMI, an increase in exercise self-efficacy, and significantly higher step count at key points following our interventions. Okay, so thank you very much for listening.